This is a tutorial on how to make something rotate and animate CC. So when you're trying to rotate an object, there's two scenarios that you'll usually run into. Sometimes you'll need to make something spin, rotating multiple times, and sometimes you'll need to have something rotate just a partial rotation. Both of these tasks are handled in different ways. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is how to make something spin. So I'm going to use the example of a tire. This would be the same process for pretty much anything that you want to spin around more than 360 degrees. So I'm going to start by drawing something to represent the tire. So I'm going to just do this with the paintbrush tool. Maybe it'll be a blue tire. You could obviously also do this with the circle tool. The one thing to be aware of, if you have something that's perfectly symmetrical and you're rotating it, you won't have an anomaly in the shape for your eye to track, so you really won't be able to tell that it's rotating. So you do want to have a visual anomaly. So this is going to be the rubber part of the tire. And then I'm going to go back, and I am going to use, I think, the circle tool to make the interior part of the tire. So for the interior part, I'm going to use a pale blue for the stroke and a medium blue maybe. Let's see. So hold shift to make a circle. I'm going to move that and place it, actually, I think that's a little big, so let me scale that down. Perfect. Okay, so you can get as complicated as you want to with the tire. I'm going to, let's see, have a center part to the tire. So I guess the center part of the hub. I think I'm also going to put kind of like a reflection on one side. That'll give you something to kind of track with your eye as you're watching this rotate. It's a little too thick. Let me get a smaller brush. And maybe it's got some lug nuts. Okay, so there's our tire. So if I want to spin that, I would come down into my layer on my timeline, and remember that if you want to animate something, you need that object that you're going to animate to be separate in the layers, right? So if I had a background, I don't have a background, but if I did, this tire would need to be separate from the background. I'm going to go ahead and name this, I guess, tire. And to animate this, we're going to move down in time however long we want the rotation to last. So let's say that I want it to last 3 seconds. You're going to put in a keyframe by using the shortcut function 6. You're going to select the first keyframe by selecting it, by clicking on it. Hold the shift key. Click on the second keyframe, and that will select the 2 keyframes and all the frames in between. Then control click on one of the in-between frames, it doesn't matter which one, and from the animation menu that appears, pick the option Create Classic Tween. Now, in your timeline will get an arrow, which lets you have an indication, a visual indication, that the tween was applied. Now, this tween at this point will not be doing anything. So to make it spin, we're going to go to the Property palette, and in the Properties in the Tweening area, be aware that you may need to open this up by clicking on the down arrow. There's a rotation area, and by default it's set to auto, but I'm going to set this one to clockwise. Now you may want your tire to rotate counterclockwise. In this case, I'm going to make it rotate clockwise. The second thing you can do is you can cause it to rotate a number of times. By default, it's going to default to 1, but if you want it to rotate more than one time across the 35 frames, then simply put in another number. So let's say that I want it to rotate 4 times. So now if we go to Control, Test Scene, and we watch our scene, you'll have your tire rotating. It's a little bit of a wompy looking tire, but maybe it's going flat. So that's how you rotate something, if you want it to rotate completely. Let me make a new scene. So I'm going to go to Insert Scene. And let's now rotate something partially. So let's say that I have, I'll do the example that I gave you in class. Okay, so in class, we're doing a clock with a pendulum. So a pendulum would partially rotate. So let me draw a clock real quick. I'm just going to do this with the brush tool. Or maybe actually I will use let's use the circle tool. So I use the circle tool. That's going to be our clock face. We need some numbers on the clock. So you could do this with the type tool. In the interest of time, I'm just going to do this with the paintbrush tool. So 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And if you want to put hashes for the other hours. So in the interest of time, did that fast, right? Maybe we'll put the clock hands on here. Maybe it'll be 4 o'clock. Okay, so to do the pendulum, I'm going to draw the rod part of the pendulum. And then we'll just get the oval tool and we'll make the part that's the bob. I actually didn't want that to have a stroke, so let me delete that stroke. No, actually, maybe I'll keep the stroke. Okay, so remember that if you want to move something, you need to have it in its own layer. So I've actually kind of made a mistake here. So I need the clock face to be on one layer. I'm going to go ahead and name this one clock face. But I need the pendulum to be in a second layer because I'm going to animate it separately. So if you accidentally draw something on the wrong layer, you can just select it and copy it, Command C, or you can go to the Edit menu and go to Copy. Just delete it, just hitting the Delete key. Make a second layer, which I need to have underneath the clock face, which I'm going to call Pendulum. And then with the second layer, selected, the first keyframe selected, just go to the edit menu and go to paste, or you can do the shortcut Command V. So I'm going to put this where it needs to be. So it would be right there, right? And let's make it swing. So to make it swing, I need to decide how long that's going to take. So let's say it takes 45 frames. So I'm going to move the clock face down 45 frames by hitting function 5. And then the pendulum will make it swing forward, and that's going to take 15 frames. So I'm going to come to the 15th frame, and I'm going to put in a keyframe, function 6. Select the first frame, hold shift, select the second frame. Now I'm on the pendulum layer. Control click on one of the in-between frames, it doesn't matter which one, and from the animation menu that appears, pick the option Create Classic Tween. Now we need it to rotate around the top of the pendulum, right, where it attaches to the clock face. And by default, it's going to rotate around the mathematical center of the object. So we need to change something. So if you select the first frame, the first keyframe on the pendulum layer, and you go to the third tool, which is the free transform tool, the free transform tool lets you rotate or scale or skew or make various different transformations, but it also lets you control the rotation point. The rotation point is that circle that I'm circling with my mouse, and I want to move that rotation point up to the top of the pendulum where it connects to the clock. Now I need to do that for both keyframes. So I'm now going to move to the second keyframe. So select the second keyframe on the pendulum layer, and I'm going to move the rotation point up as well. Now with the second keyframe selected, I can move my cursor to one of the corner handles. Those are the squares, the black squares. My cursor will turn into a circular arrow, which is my indication that I'm rotating, and then click and drag until you get it rotated to the point where you want it to rotate forward. Release the mouse. Now this is the first part of the animation. So the pendulum's going to rotate forward, right? Well, now I need it to swing back. So I'm going to have that take 30 frames. So I'm going to go to the, or I'm going to have that, let's see. Yeah. So I'm going to make that take until the 30th frame. So I'm going to go to the 30th frame, and I'm going to select the 30th frame. I'm going to hit function 5. I'm going to hit function 6 to put in a keyframe. Then with that third keyframe selected, the one I just created, and the third tool selected, the free transform tool, I'm going to put my cursor over one of the corner points. When the display changes to a circular cursor, I can click and drag back. So I'm going to drag back to its ending position, right? And then finally, I need to have it swing back to neutral, which will be hanging straight down. So I'm going to go to the 45th frame, put in a keyframe, function 6, and then rotate it back to the neutral position. Just something like that. So if we watch this, I'm going to go to Control Test Scene. You'll have the pendulum moving back and forth. So that's how you animate something in Animate CC that is a partial rotation. So you would use that for anything that you that you did not need to rotate 360 degrees. That's basically it for this tutorial. So thanks.